In a luxurious hospital hiding dark secrets, a brave nurse and a billionaire trapped within his own body embark on an extraordinary journey to uncover the truth and fight for justice. This is their gripping story, a tale of courage, hope, and resilience. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our most captivating tales. If you enjoy our content, give us a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's begin the journey with Sophia and Lucas. The fluorescent lights of Willow Ridge Rehabilitation Center buzzed faintly as Sophia Langston wheeled her cleaning cart down the quiet hallway. The center wasn't her dream job, but it paid the bills. Still, as a nurse fresh out of school, Sophia had entered the field with grand visions of saving lives and making a difference. That dream now felt distant. Her daily tasks involved ensuring comfort for patients who rarely responded, if they even could. One patient stood out among the rest, Lucas Kane, the billionaire CEO of Kane Enterprises. Before his accident, Lucas had been a commanding force in the business world, known for his sharp intellect and iron will. Now, he was a shadow of that man, confined to a bed, his body sustained by machines, his face a mask of stillness. The official diagnosis labeled him in a persistent vegetative state, but Sophia couldn't help but wonder if the man who had once conquered boardrooms was truly gone. As she entered Lucas's room, she felt the usual mixture of reverence and pity. He lay motionless, his body a contrast to the life and vitality captured in the photos that still hung on the wall. A younger Lucas shaking hands with presidents, smiling alongside his executive team, standing atop the podium of a prestigious awards ceremony. "Good morning, Mr. Kane," she greeted him, though she didn't expect a response. Her voice was soft, a reflexive attempt to offer comfort to a man who might never hear her. "I hear the rain's coming in later today. I bet you used to hate that, huh? Getting stuck in traffic or having meetings canceled last minute." She worked quickly, checking his vitals, adjusting his IV drip, and fluffing the pillow behind his head. Despite the routine, Sophia always made an effort to talk to him as if he could hear her. It was one of the ways she clung to her idealism, even in this thankless job. As she stood by the window, her gaze flicked back to Lucas. Something felt off. A prickle of unease crawled up her spine. His face seemed different, the slightest tension in his features, a wrinkle on his brow that hadn't been there before. "Just my imagination," Sophia muttered, shaking off the feeling. But she couldn't entirely dismiss it. There was something about today that felt charged, as if the air itself were heavier. The next morning, Sophia's steps slowed as she approached Lucas's room. She tried to push aside her unease, chalking up yesterday's experience to fatigue. It wasn't uncommon for nurses to start imagining things after too many long shifts. But as she entered, her heart skipped a beat. Lucas's head was tilted slightly toward the window, his face angled just enough that it couldn't have been an accident. Sophia froze. This was impossible. A man in Lucas's condition couldn't move independently. Her hands shook as she approached his bed. "Mr. Kane?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machines. "Lucas, can you hear me?" There was no response, but her heart thudded in her chest as her eyes scanned his face. A single tear had rolled down his cheek, glistening in the morning sunlight. Sophia's breath caught. She wiped the tear away gently with her thumb, her mind racing. It could have been a reflex, she reasoned, some involuntary response. Yet, deep down, she felt a spark of something she couldn't explain. Hope. Later that day, while finishing her rounds, Sophia heard a soft thud coming from Lucas's room. She dropped the clipboard she was holding and rushed back. As she pushed open the door, her pulse quickened. The sound of the machines was punctuated by something faint but unmistakable, a whisper. "Hello?" Sophia called, her voice trembling. The room seemed unchanged at first glance. Lucas lay as he always did, motionless except for the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest. But then she saw it. His fingers, ever so slightly, twitched against the blanket. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. Could it really be? She needed a second opinion. She tracked down Warren, a seasoned nurse who had been at Willow Ridge for over a decade. "You've got to see this," she urged, tugging at his arm. Warren followed her reluctantly, grumbling about overworked imaginations and false alarms. But as soon as they entered Lucas's room, they both froze. A soft gasp escaped Lucas's lips, faint but undeniable. "Did you see that?" Sophia asked, her voice breathless. Warren stared at the bed, his face pale. I did. This was no accident, no coincidence. Sophia knew in that moment that Lucas Kane wasn't as unresponsive as everyone believed. She had no idea what it meant, but she was determined to find out. Sophia sat across from Dr. Malik in his meticulously organized office. The doctor was a man of precision. His desk an immaculate arrangement of files, a pen holder, and a framed photo of his family. His calm demeanor gave him an air of authority that often discouraged dissent. But Sophia wasn't here to back down. You're saying Mr. Kane gasped and that his fingers moved? Dr. Malik asked, his tone skeptical as he flipped through Lucas's charts. Yes, Sophia said firmly. And not just that. There was a tear. He turned his head. These aren't random reflexes, Dr. Malik. I believe he's trying to communicate. Dr. Malik sighed, placing the chart on his desk. Sophia, I understand your concern, but patients in persistent vegetative states sometimes exhibit involuntary movements. It's not uncommon, and it doesn't signify recovery. His vitals are stable, and his brain scans show no significant changes. But I appreciate your dedication, he interrupted, his voice smooth but firm. However, raising false hope isn't productive. Mr. Kane's condition is unchanged. I suggest you focus on his care, not on speculating about impossible outcomes. Sophia felt her face flush with frustration. Dr. Malik, I'm not imagining this. I've been working with him for months. I know what I saw. Noted, he said, his tone dismissive as he turned back to his computer. But unless you have concrete evidence, there's nothing more to discuss. As Sophia left the office, her stomach churned with anger and doubt. She had hoped for support, or at least curiosity, but instead she'd been brushed aside. The weight of her responsibility pressed on her. What if she was wrong? What if it was just wishful thinking? That night, Sophia returned to Lucas's room. The hallway was eerily quiet, the distant hum of machines the only sound. Moonlight spilled through the window, casting pale shadows across the room. She stood by his bed, watching him, her heart heavy. I'm not giving up on you, she whispered. If you're in there, if you can hear me, I'll figure this out. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something, his eyelids fluttering, a faint glimmer of recognition in his gaze. Her breath caught. Was it real, or was her mind playing tricks on her? Her resolve solidified. If Lucas Kane was fighting to reach out, she wouldn't stop until she found a way to help him. The next morning, Sophia arrived early for her shift, eager to check on Lucas. As she adjusted his pillow, she noticed his lips moving ever so slightly. Her pulse quickened, and she leaned in closer, straining to hear. Don't, he croaked, his voice so faint it was almost lost beneath the hum of the machines. Don't what? Sophia asked urgently, her heart pounding. What are you trying to say? Don't trust them, he rasped, his words barely audible. Before Sophia could respond, the door creaked open. She straightened quickly, her heart racing as Dr. Malik stepped into the room. His sharp eyes scanned her face, his expression unreadable. Everything all right here? He asked, his tone casual but probing. Yes, Sophia said quickly, masking her unease. I was just checking his vitals. Dr. Malik walked to the monitors, his gaze lingering on the steady lines that represented Lucas's condition. Good. We wouldn't want any unnecessary disruptions in his care. Sophia forced a nod, but her mind was racing. The timing of his arrival felt too coincidental, as if he had been watching her. As Dr. Malik left, his words echoed in her mind. Was he warning her, or was it a veiled threat? She turned back to Lucas, who now seemed more vulnerable than ever. His earlier words rang in her ears. Don't trust them. What did he mean? Was it about the facility, the staff, or perhaps Dr. Malik himself? Unease gripped her as she left the room. Something wasn't right, and she couldn't ignore it. If Lucas's warning was true, she needed to tread carefully. Whatever secrets were buried here, she was determined to uncover them, even if it meant putting herself at risk. The warning lingered in Sophia's mind like an echo she couldn't shake. Don't trust them. Who were they? The staff? The administration? Dr. Malik? The questions gnawed at her, but she couldn't find answers on her own. She needed someone she could trust, someone who could help her dig deeper. That evening, she approached Warren Cole, a senior nurse who had worked at Willow Ridge for over 20 years. Warren was known for his meticulousness and his knack for uncovering things others missed. Though often gruff, he had a deep sense of loyalty to his patients. Warren, can I talk to you? Sophia asked, her voice low as they stood near the staff break room. He raised an eyebrow. "What's on your mind?" "It's about Mr. Kane," she began cautiously. "I think he's aware. He's trying to communicate." Warren frowned, setting down his coffee. "That's a hell of a claim, Sophia. You're sure?" "I've seen signs, movement, tears, even whispers. He told me not to trust them," she said, her words spilling out in a rush. "I know it sounds crazy, but I can't ignore it." Warren rubbed his jaw, his brow furrowed. "It doesn't sound crazy, but it does sound dangerous. If you're right and someone's hiding something, you'll be stepping on a lot of toes by looking into this." "I don't care," Sophia said firmly. "If there's even a chance that Lucas Kane is still in there, I have to do something. Will you help me?" Warren sighed heavily, then nodded. "All right, but we need to be careful. There's a lot of red tape around Kane's case, and for good reason. I'll check the archives, see if there's anything unusual in his medical records or treatment history. You focus on anything you can find about the accident that brought him here." Sophia felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Warren. I owe you." "Just don't get us both fired," he grumbled, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. That night, Sophia sat at her computer, scouring news articles and public records about Lucas's accident. The official story was simple: a car crash during a storm with Lucas as the sole survivor. But as she dug deeper, details didn't add up. Witness accounts were vague, and the investigation had been closed unusually quickly. Meanwhile, Warren texted her late into the night. "Found something. We need to talk. Meet me in the archive room tomorrow." The next evening, Sophia slipped into the dimly lit archive room. Rows of filing cabinets stretched endlessly, the scent of old paper heavy in the air. Warren was already there, his face pale, a folder in his hands. "What is it?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I went through Kane's treatment logs," Warren said, his voice tense. "There's a pattern. For months, he's been given experimental drugs, high doses of sedatives, and something else I don't recognize. They're suppressing him, Sophia, keeping him from waking up." Sophia's stomach dropped. "Why would they do that?" Warren shook his head. "I don't know, but it's not normal. And it's not just the drugs. His records show discrepancies, tests ordered, then canceled, scans that were never done. Someone's covering their tracks." Before Sophia could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Both of them froze. "Get down," Warren hissed, shoving the folder into Sophia's hands and pulling her behind a cabinet. The archive room door creaked open, and the beam of a flashlight swept across the room. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest as two figures entered, speaking in hushed tones. "She said she'd be here," one of them muttered. "Search the place," the other ordered. Sophia clutched the folder tightly, her breath shallow as she crouched behind the cabinet. She glanced at Warren, who gestured for her to stay quiet. The intruders moved methodically, their flashlights illuminating each row of cabinets. Sophia's pulse quickened as the light came closer. Just as the beam reached their hiding spot, there was a loud crash from the far side of the room. The intruders cursed and rushed toward the noise. "Go," Warren whispered urgently, pushing Sophia toward the door. She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll cover you. Just go." With no time to argue, Sophia bolted from the archive room, clutching the folder to her chest. She slipped into a supply closet down the hall, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she heard the footsteps receding. When the coast was clear, she opened the folder. Inside was a flash drive taped to a piece of paper. Scrawled in Warren's handwriting were the words, "Take this. The truth is on here." Sophia's relief was short-lived when she heard a pained groan from the direction of the archives. Her blood ran cold. "Warren," she whispered. She peeked out of the closet, but the hallway was empty. Fear gripped her as she realized she couldn't go back. Whoever was after them was dangerous, and now they'd know she had the flash drive. Sophia's hands trembled as she tucked the folder into her bag. She had uncovered a horrifying secret, but at what cost? Warren's life was in danger, and so was hers. Her only choice now was to uncover the truth and expose whoever was behind this before they silenced her for good. The tension was unbearable as Sophia sat in her small apartment, staring at the flash drive Warren had risked everything to give her. Her laptop sat open on the table, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. Every instinct told her that the contents of the drive would hold the answers she sought, but also unleash a storm she wasn't prepared for. Taking a deep breath, She inserted the drive. Files loaded one by one: medical logs, video recordings, and emails. Her eyes scanned the documents, disbelief and horror mounting with each passing moment. The files confirmed Warren's fears. Lucas Kane had been subjected to experimental drug regimens under the guise of rehabilitative treatment, but the real purpose was far more sinister. The emails revealed a conspiracy to keep him incapacitated, his condition manipulated by high doses of sedatives and neuroblockers. The drugs were designed to suppress any cognitive recovery, ensuring he remained unaware and unresponsive. The motives became clear in a series of emails between Dr. Malik and high-ranking executives from Kane Enterprises. With Lucas out of the picture, control of his multi-billion-dollar empire had quietly shifted to a board of trustees, handpicked by Malik's associates. Sophia's stomach churned as she read, "Ensure no change in patient's condition. If Kane wakes, the entire arrangement collapses." The final blow came in the form of a video file. It was grainy but unmistakable. Lucas, strapped to a hospital bed, his eyes flickering open for the briefest moment as a nurse injected him with a syringe. His muffled protests were met with indifference, the nurse continuing as if he weren't even there. Sophia slammed the laptop shut, bile rising in her throat. They had turned Lucas Kane into a prisoner in his own body, a pawn in their twisted game of power and greed. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at her door. She froze, her heart pounding. Who would be here at this hour? "Sophia," a familiar voice whispered. "It's me." She opened the door a crack to see Lucas's pale, gaunt face in the wheelchair, and behind him, Dr. Malik. "What are you doing here?" Sophia asked sharply, her hand tightening on the doorframe. Dr. Malik's face was calm, but his eyes were cold. "We need to talk." Sophia hesitated before stepping aside, her instincts screaming at her to be cautious. She guided Lucas into the room and shut the door behind them. "What is this about?" she demanded. Dr. Malik folded his arms, his posture relaxed, but his tone laced with warning. "You've been poking around where you don't belong. I know you were in the archives with Warren. I know you took something." Sophia's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." Malik's lips curled into a faint smile. "Don't play games, Sophia. Whatever you think you found, it doesn't matter. You're in over your head." Sophia glanced at Lucas, whose eyes were wide with desperation. "He told me," she said softly. "He told me not to trust you, and now I know why." Lucas's head moved faintly in a nod, his lips trembling as he tried to speak. "You have no idea what you're up against," Malik said, stepping closer. "Do you think you can take on Kane Enterprises? Do you think anyone will believe a nurse over me? I have powerful allies, Sophia. You'd be wise to let this go." Sophia squared her shoulders, her fear replaced by defiance. "You underestimated me, Dr. Malik, and you underestimated him." She gestured to Lucas, whose gaze burned with determination. Malik's calm facade cracked for a split second, his jaw tightening. "This is your last warning. Stop this, or you'll regret it." But before Malik could say more, Lucas mustered all his strength and rasped a single word: "Run!" Sophia's heart leaped into her throat at Lucas's warning. Without a second thought, she moved between him and Dr. Malik, her body instinctively shielding him. "You're not taking him," she said, her voice trembling with resolve. Malik's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake, Sophia." The room was a blur of motion as she grabbed Lucas's wheelchair handles and backed toward the door. Malik stepped forward, his presence looming, but Sophia's sharp glare stopped him. "Don't come any closer," she warned, her voice steady now. "If you do, I swear I'll scream so loud the entire building will hear." Malik hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "You won't get far," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Watch me," she shot back, yanking the door open and wheeling Lucas into the dimly lit hallway. Every nerve in her body was on high alert as she navigated the corridors, her mind racing. She needed a plan, a way out. The staff exit was their best bet, but she knew it wouldn't be long before Malik raised the alarm. As they reached the elevator, Lucas's hand twitched, his finger pointing weakly toward her bag. "Flash," he murmured. She understood immediately. The flash drive was their key, their evidence. "I've got it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I won't let them take you." The elevator doors opened with a chime, and Sophia pushed Lucas inside, her heart hammering as the doors slid shut. She punched the button for the ground floor, praying they could make it out before Malik's goons caught up. When the doors opened, the hallway ahead was clear. Sophia pushed Lucas toward the staff exit, the night air just beyond the door a beacon of hope. But as they neared the door, alarms blared, the sound piercing and relentless. Sophia's stomach dropped. Malik had sounded the alarm. "Hold on," she whispered, gripping the wheelchair tightly. She shoved the door open and pushed Lucas into the night, the cool air a stark contrast to the chaos behind them. Security guards shouted from the building, their voices growing louder. Sophia didn't stop. Her only focus was getting Lucas to safety. A car sat parked nearby, her old sedan. Fumbling with the keys, she opened the passenger door and helped Lucas into the seat, her hands trembling as she buckled him in. The guards were closing in, their flashlights bobbing in the darkness. Sophia threw the wheelchair into the trunk and jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut. The guards reached the car just as she turned the key in the ignition. "Stop!" one of them yelled, pounding on the window. But Sophia didn't stop. She floored the accelerator, the tires screeching as they sped into the night. Her chest heaved with adrenaline as the facility disappeared in the rearview mirror. Lucas slumped in the seat beside her, his breathing shallow but steady. "We're not safe yet," she said, her voice shaking. "But I swear, Lucas, I'll protect you, no matter what." The road ahead was dark and uncertain, but for the first time, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope. They were free, for now, and she wasn't going to stop until the truth was exposed. The cold wind lashed against Sophia's face as she drove down the deserted highway, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Lucas sat beside her, slumped against the seat, his breathing labored but steady. The faint glow of city lights in the distance was her only indication of where they were headed. Her old sedan roared down the road, the engine protesting against the speed she demanded. Behind her, the facility's alarms echoed faintly, the shouts of the guards now a distant memory. But Sophia knew better than to let her guard down. "They'll come for us," she muttered under her breath. Lucas stirred beside her, his eyes fluttering open. His lips moved, forming faint words she strained to hear. "Safe? Yet?" "No," she replied, her voice firm. "Not yet, but we will be, I promise." The promise felt heavy, like a weight pressing on her chest. She had no plan, no clear destination, only the flash drive in her bag and the truth it held. It was a weapon, but it was also a target on their backs. She glanced at the rearview mirror. Her heart leaped into her throat when she saw headlights approaching fast. A sleek black SUV, its lights glaring and menacing. Her worst fear had materialized. They had found her. "Hold on, Lucas," she said, her voice shaking. Sophia pressed the gas pedal to the floor, the car lurching forward with a jolt. The engine whined in protest, but she didn't relent. The SUV gained on them, its powerful engine closing the distance with ease. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, flanked by dense woods on either side. Sophia's mind raced, searching for options. She spotted an upcoming turnoff, a narrow road leading into the forest. It was risky, but she had no choice. She yanked the wheel to the right, the tires screeching as the car veered off the main road. Gravel crunched beneath the wheels as they sped onto the uneven path, the headlights of the SUV still glaring behind them. Branches scraped against the sides of the car, the narrow road barely wide enough for her sedan. The SUV followed, its size making it slower but no less threatening. Sophia navigated the twists and turns with precision, her adrenaline fueling her every move. Come on," she whispered, her eyes darting between the road ahead and the SUV behind. Lucas let out a faint groan, his hand clutching the armrest. Sophia glanced at him briefly, her heart clenching. She couldn't fail him. Not now, not after everything they had been through. Up ahead, the road split into two. Sophia made a split-second decision, veering left and plunging deeper into the forest. The SUV hesitated, its headlights briefly flickering as it decided which path to follow. For a moment, Sophia thought she had lost them, but then she heard it. The roar of the engine, louder and closer than before. "They're still on us," she muttered, panic creeping into her voice. The road suddenly opened up into a clearing, the trees giving way to an expanse of dirt and grass. Sophia spotted an old, dilapidated barn in the distance. It was risky, but it was her only chance. She steered the car toward the barn, the headlights of the SUV still glaring behind her. As she reached the structure, she slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. "Stay here," she told Lucas, her voice firm. He shook his head weakly, his eyes pleading. "I'll be right back," she promised, grabbing the flash drive from her bag. Sophia climbed out of the car and sprinted toward the barn. She pushed open the heavy wooden doors, the smell of hay and dust filling her nostrils. Inside, she found what she had hoped for, a place to hide. She ran back to the car, opened the passenger door, and carefully helped Lucas out. He was weak, his body trembling, but he managed to stay upright with her support. Together, they made their way into the barn, Sophia closing the doors behind them just as the SUV roared into the clearing. Inside the barn, the air was thick with tension. Sophia guided Lucas to a stack of hay bales and helped him sit down. His breathing was shallow, his face pale, but his eyes burned with determination. "We can't stay here long," Sophia said, her voice low. "They'll search this place." Lucas nodded weakly, his fingers twitching as if trying to gesture toward the flash drive. Sophia pulled it from her pocket, holding it up. "This is what they're after," she said. "It's the only leverage we have." Lucas's lips moved, his voice barely a whisper. "Use it. Expose them." Sophia's throat tightened. She knew he was right, but the weight of their situation pressed down on her like a vice. They were fugitives, hunted by powerful people with limitless resources. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside. Sophia froze, her heart pounding. She peeked through a crack in the barn door and saw two men with flashlights, their beams cutting through the darkness. "They're here," she whispered, turning back to Lucas. His eyes widened, his hand gripping hers weakly. "Go," he rasped. "No," she said firmly. "I'm not leaving you." The flashlights swept closer, the beams dancing across the barn's exterior. Sophia's mind raced. She needed a distraction, something to buy them time. She spotted an old oil lamp hanging on the wall. Grabbing it, she quickly doused the hay bales near the door in oil and struck a match. Flames roared to life, smoke billowing upward and obscuring the barn's interior. The men outside shouted, their voices muffled by the crackling fire. Sophia seized the moment, guiding Lucas out through a back entrance she had spotted earlier. As they emerged into the cold night air, Sophia glanced back at the barn, now engulfed in flames. The fire would delay their pursuers, but it wouldn't stop them. "We need to keep moving," she said, her voice trembling. Lucas nodded faintly, his strength fading. Sophia knew they couldn't keep running forever. They needed help, someone who could expose the truth and protect them. Her mind turned to the journalist she had met once before, a man known for his fearless reporting on corruption and corporate greed. If anyone could bring Malik and his associates to justice, it was him. "We're going to find him," she told Lucas, her voice filled with determination. "And we're going to make sure the world knows what they did to you." Lucas's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. For the first time, hope flickered in his weary eyes. As they disappeared into the forest, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over, but she was ready for whatever lay ahead. Together, she and Lucas would uncover the truth, and they wouldn't stop until justice was served. Sophia drove in silence, her eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. Lucas sat slumped in the passenger seat, his head resting against the window, his breath shallow but steady. The forest road stretched endlessly, cloaked in shadows and silence, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The name she had thought of earlier now burned in her mind, Ethan Moreau, a journalist with a reputation for taking down the untouchable. Ethan had exposed corrupt corporations, brought down politicians, and, most importantly, protected his sources. Sophia had met him briefly years ago at a healthcare conference, and though they hadn't spoken since, she knew he was her best hope. After hours of driving, Sophia pulled into a secluded rest stop off the highway. The area was deserted, the only sounds the faint rustling of leaves and the distant hum of passing cars. She parked the car under the cover of a large oak tree and turned to Lucas. "Wait here," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I need to make a call." Lucas nodded weakly, his eyes half closed. Sophia grabbed her phone and stepped out into the crisp night air. She searched through her contacts until she found Ethan's number, her thumb hesitating over the call button. Would he even remember her? And if he did, would he agree to help? She pressed the button and held her breath as the phone rang. On the third ring, a gruff voice answered. "This is Ethan Moreau." "It's Sophia Garrett," she said, her voice trembling slightly. We met a few years ago at the Healthcare Ethics Conference. You gave a talk about whistleblowers. There was a pause, then his tone softened. I remember you, the nurse who asked all those tough questions about patient advocacy. What's going on? I need your help, Sophia said, glancing back at the car where Lucas sat. I've uncovered something big. A patient at my facility, a billionaire, was deliberately kept in a vegetative state to control his empire. I have proof, but they're after me. I need to meet you somewhere safe. Ethan was silent for a moment, and Sophia feared he might dismiss her story as too outlandish. But then he spoke, his voice steady and calm. Where are you? Near exit 17 on the Northern Highway, she replied. There's an old diner about 10 miles from there, off Route 84. Meet me in 2 hours, Ethan said, and bring the evidence. Sophia thanked him and ended the call, her heart pounding. She returned to the car and leaned into the passenger seat. We're meeting someone who can help, she said, her voice filled with determination. Lucas's lips moved faintly, forming a single word. Good. 2 hours later, Sophia pulled into the parking lot of the diner Ethan had mentioned. The building was small and nondescript, its neon sign flickering against the night sky. A single car was parked outside, its driver leaning against the hood. Ethan Moreau was exactly as Sophia remembered, tall, with salt and pepper hair and piercing gray eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He straightened as she approached, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. You look like you've been through hell, Ethan said, his gaze shifting to Lucas, who was still in the car. We have, Sophia replied, but we've got the evidence to prove everything. Inside the diner, they sat in a secluded booth, the flash drive resting on the table between them. Sophia explained everything. Nathan's condition, Dr. Malik's experiments, the cover-up at the facility, and the chase that had led them here. Ethan listened intently, his expression darkening with every word. When Sophia finished, he picked up the flash drive and plugged it into his laptop. The files loaded quickly, revealing medical records, financial transactions, and encrypted messages between Malik and his associates. Ethan's face hardened as he read through the documents. This is explosive, he said, his voice low. If we publish this, it'll destroy Malik and everyone involved. But they'll fight back hard. Are you ready for that? I don't have a choice, Sophia replied, glancing at Lucas. This is the only way to protect him and to make sure they can't do this to anyone else. Ethan nodded, closing his laptop. I'll get to work. Stay here tonight. It's safer than being on the road. I'll make arrangements to get this out first thing in the morning. By dawn, the wheels of justice were already turning. Ethan's expose, published online and picked up by major news outlets, sent shockwaves through the corporate and medical worlds. The article detailed everything: the experimental treatments, the corruption at Blackwood, and Malik's efforts to suppress Nathan's recovery. The fallout was immediate. Arrest warrants were issued for Malik and several of his associates. The board of Blackwood Rehabilitation Center resigned en masse, and the facility was placed under investigation. Sophia and Lucas stayed hidden in a safe house provided by Ethan's network. Over the next few weeks, Lucas's condition improved steadily. Freed from the drugs that had kept him sedated, his strength returned, and he began physical therapy to regain his mobility. One afternoon, as Lucas managed to stand on his own for the first time, he looked at Sophia with tears in his eyes. I couldn't have done this without you, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. You didn't give up? Sophia replied, her own eyes glistening. That's what matters. The media frenzy eventually died down, but the impact of the story lingered. Blackwood's practices were overhauled, and new regulations were introduced to prevent similar abuses. Malik and his conspirators faced long prison sentences, their power and influence stripped away. As for Sophia and Lucas, their bond only grew stronger. Nathan, now fully aware of the world around him, offered Sophia a position as his personal nurse and confidant, a role she accepted without hesitation. Together, they worked to rebuild his life and his legacy, determined to ensure his empire stood for integrity and compassion. One evening, as they watched the sunset from Nathan's estate, Sophia turned to him and said, You once told me not to trust them, but I'm glad I trusted you. Nathan smiled, his eyes filled with warmth, and I'm glad you didn't give up on me. Their journey had been harrowing, but it had also been transformative. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, their shared resilience forging a future built on truth and justice. The journey of Sophia and Lucas was more than an escape from the clutches of greed. It was a testament to the power of courage and perseverance. Sophia, once a dedicated nurse, became a symbol of those who dare to stand for what is right, no matter the danger. Lucas, a man once trapped within his own body, found his way back to the light of life through her unwavering compassion and belief. Their story spread far and wide, inspiring countless others. The corrupt system that had allowed men like Dr. Malik to thrive now faced immense pressure to reform. Policies changed, laws were enacted, and thousands of patients like Lucas were given a second chance at life. In a serene mansion atop a verdant hill, Lucas stood by the window, gazing into the horizon. His eyes no longer reflected helplessness, but hope. Nearby, Sophia sat at her desk, penning a journal entry about the journey they had endured. "We did it," she thought to herself. They had not only saved one life, but had begun to change an entire system. And as the evening breeze swept through, carrying the scent of renewal, they both understood that their story didn't end here. It was a new beginning, a reminder that truth always finds a way to be heard, and that justice awaits those brave enough to pursue it. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this incredible story. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed the journey of Sophia and Lucas, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories like this one. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please drop a comment below and share your favorite moment from the story. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired and take care.